Thank you very much. And first of all, let me apologize. I have a cold, a severe cold. I hope I can muddle through, but please bear with me. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come here today. It's a great pleasure. I'm going to give you a few words about State of Green first, what kind of organization we are and what we do, and then I'll move closer into the renewable area. We are what we call a public-private partnership. We're not for profit. We were set up in 2008 in preparation for Denmark hosting the UN Climate Conference in 2009. Behind us is the Danish government and the 4 leading business organizations in Denmark. The idea was, back in 2008, you have to bear in mind that at the time Denmark received a lot of focus and had received a lot of focus internationally for a couple of years because of the Mohammed cartoons, as you may remember, the cartoon crisis. The government then decided they needed to do something to paint another picture of Denmark internationally. And they talked to the business organizations, and they decided on focusing on COP15 in Copenhagen. They knew there would be approximately 10,000 international delegates coming to Copenhagen, plus more than 1,000 media people. So why not try and capitalize on this international interest in Denmark and try and paint a picture of Denmark as a green nation, because everybody believed we had a good story to tell. That was the background for setting up State of Green. Our job is to make Denmark visible internationally as a green nation, provide the narrative about Denmark. Where did we come from back in to the first oil crisis? Where are we today, and where are we heading in the green area? Together with our owners, we decided to focus on 10 core competencies that we believe Denmark has. Wind power definitely being one, bioenergy, as you can see, energy efficiency, district heating, cooling, sustainable transportation, water, etc., etc. So these 10 different sectors we have been focusing on ever since. And by we, I mean our organization. We are 10 people working on an annual budget of a little less than 2 million euros. We have a number of activities. First of all, we have a website which I encourage you to take a look at. It's called stateofgreen.com. It's in English. There's a Chinese version now also, and we have a limited edition also in Japanese. We have succeeded over those years since then to have virtually all Danish companies, institutions, organizations working in the green area to have a profile on our platform. We provide the platform, they provide the content. It's for free, nobody pays to be there. You can upload, as a company or organization, you can upload all the information about yourself as you want to. We make sure that the platform is known internationally, and we have about 45,000 international visitors every month. Obviously, we do not promote individual products. That's not our business. That's up to the companies to do that. As I started out by saying, we provide the narrative, the overall narrative about Denmark, and even some of the biggest Danish companies in the green sector, they can see an advantage in being part of State of Green and being part of our international promotion, even though you have a Vestas, you have Grundfos and others who are very good at international exposure. But from time to time, it's good for them to be under the national umbrella. We participate in selected events internationally where we try and promote Denmark as a green nation. We have the website, as I said. We have a 400 square meter showroom in the middle of Copenhagen, and we do a lot of work also in press and communication. And last but not least, we have a program called State of Green Tours, where we take care of all incoming visitors who come to Denmark to learn more about Danish competences in the green area. Last year, we hosted 170 international delegations with more than 2,300 visitors. And I would encourage you, if you want to put together a group of idea to come to Denmark, we definitely would be absolutely pleased to help you set up the meetings. What we do is for free. All the work we do is for free. We can put together a complete program for you while you are in Denmark. This is a screen dump of our website. You can see it's a mixture of company news, news about international events. There's a calendar. You can't see it actually on this one here, but you can check it out on our website when you have some time. This is almost impossible to see, but we work together with the Danish Technical University and provide information to them. They have a platform called NetSites DK, which is all about unlocking the innovative potential of sustainable production in Denmark. Here on this platform, you could call it a big data platform. The idea is to provide companies, government agencies, institutions, etc., with tools to proactively identify new opportunities for cooperation with other organizations, with businesses, cutting-edge network thinking, etc. And it's also a place where you can find new products. I apologize for this slide. It's almost unreadable. Then we also in the 10 different sectors, we have made a number of what we call white papers. We actually produced one last year. I have it here, and I have a number of copies you can come up and pick up afterwards up here. We have one on bioenergy as well, where we have, I think, about 8 to 10 different cases of bioenergy usage in Denmark, concrete cases which are described, and the idea obviously is to give inspirations to to others who would like to get deeper into bioenergy. Excuse me. We heard earlier this morning that there seems to be a lack of investors at this conference. I noticed that, and just to give you an example, in Denmark we have now succeeded in getting some of the pension companies to invest in renewables, actually several billion euros every year. And we have also within biomass, we have investors, large-scale investors, pension companies. Pension Denmark is one. They have invested. They announced only a few months ago their third investment in a biomass plant in England, I think it was. So money is available also in this area. Now this is where it all started. As Kjell mentioned, there's a lot of similarities between Denmark and Sweden being neighbors. There's also a lot of differences. I think we Danes, we have an inferiority complex in a number of areas, not least in football, after Sweden beat us just recently and took our place in the championship, but we have to live with it. But we started at the same point, actually, back in the early 70s, during the first oil crisis in 73. These pictures here in black and white, you can see all the cars parked. You can see empty highways. The government at the time introduced a system where you were only allowed to drive your car every second Sunday, for instance, to cut down on energy consumption. It came as a complete shock to Denmark at the time. We were totally dependent on imported oil. 99% of all Danish oil came virtually from one country, Saudi Arabia. And we were not at all prepared for this situation. At the same time, there was a lot of concern in the public about pollution from fossil fuels. And there was also a lot of concern about the prospect of having a nuclear plant in Denmark. There was a public debate about it, there was a parliamentary debate about it, and it ended in Denmark deciding not to go for nuclear power. We don't have nuclear power today. At the time in '73, we hadn't found the oil and gas in the North Sea that we found 10 years later. We didn't have any natural resources at all, so we were totally dependent on imported oil. This slide here is just a few years, a touchdown on a few of the initiatives taken since the 1970s. We had the oil crisis in 1973, as I mentioned. In '76, we had the first Danish energy plan. Until then, we had actually very little experience with the centralized political regulation in the energy sector. Then we had this plan in '76. It was you would call it a safeguard against a potential supply crisis. And it aimed at using subsidies to introduce renewable. That really was the start of it. You can see in 1993, the Danish Parliament agreed on increased use of biomass in the energy sector. Now, just to go, excuse me. Just to go back a little again. Shell had a slide showing the Swedish experience over that period. Here is one on Denmark, which actually shows that we have been able to decouple economic growth from energy consumption. The black line here is economic growth in real terms, in GDP real terms, approximately 70% since 1980. That's the black one. The red one is overall energy consumption, which has remained flat, more or less. And the green one is CO2 emissions that have been reduced over the same time. And I just put in the water usage also, since I was coming to Ireland, and I know water is a disputed thing here. This is water usage in the total water consumption in Denmark, which has gone down. And again, as Kjell said, we love taxes in Denmark and in Sweden. That was the reason why. But this only to show you that the energy plan from 1976 actually worked out. It focused massively on energy efficiency and on renewables. Energy efficiency in the form of subsidies to industry, subsidies to individuals, households who wanted to insulate their houses, put in new windows, all with the view to cut down on energy consumption. As far as renewables are concerned, subsidies to biomass production, for instance, subsidies to wind. We have the world leading wind companies are located in Denmark today. If you look at energy consumption, I think I have a slide later on it, but 40% of all electricity consumed in Denmark is generated by wind. And we will probably reach 50% in a few years' time. And it all goes into the grid without any problem at all. I have a couple of slides on production and consumption of renewable energy. I'll make sure you can have this presentation afterwards. It's impossible to see from where you are now. But renewable energy, you can't see it, but renewable energy sources covered approximately 27% of Denmark's final energy consumption in 2014. Those are the most recent figures. And if you look at production of wind energy alone, it was 47.1 petajoule, which is an increase of more than 17%. Straw, 18.4 petajoule, wood, 35.5, and biodegradable waste, I think 21%. Now going to consumption. Consumption has gone up in 2014 compared to 2013. Yes, I know I have to hurry up. I'll go past to this one here because now we're talking about where will we be by 2020. We should have not only 30% but actually 35% renewable energy and final energy consumption by 2020. Approximately 50% of electricity power to be supplied from wind, as I mentioned. We're going to see a further reduction in gross energy consumption by 7.5% by 2020 compared to 2010. And we're going to see a further reduction by more than a third of greenhouse gas emissions. These 2020 targets were laid down in a political agreement from 2012. We have a long tradition in Denmark for very broad political agreements when it comes to the big issues, taxation, energy, school systems, etc. So even though there may be a change of government, you can rest assured as an investor, for instance in energy, that what has been decided in an energy agreement will stand even though there is a change of government. These targets here were laid down in that agreement. It was backed by 95% of the Danish Parliament. Moving toward 2020, you can see here biomass, by far the biggest renewable energy source in Denmark. We had a climate commission back in 2011 which looked at the scenarios for 2050, because one of the vision of the agreement from 2012 was that Denmark by 2050 should be totally independent of fossil fuels. Work was started already in 2011 on how to achieve those goals. And we had a change of government last summer, which meant that there will be a new energy commission set up very shortly, probably within the next month or so, to look into what will the 2030 targets be. And this slide here, it shows that there are a number of ways to achieve total independence of fossil fuels by 2050. There is a wind scenario, there's a biomass scenario, etc. All of these 5 scenarios are technically possible, and they are also economically feasible. That was already laid down in 2011. The new Energy Commission will look into what will be the most cost-efficient way of going about it. Finally, on the impact on Danish society, I also heard earlier today that there seemed to be a problem with buy-in and public acceptance of wind here in Ireland. I think we in Denmark were lucky to make some good decisions back in when we started the subsidies for wind, namely via legislation. It was required already from the outset that if you wanted to have a subsidy for a new wind farm, then you were obliged to offer 20% ownership to the local people. And that together with a number of pioneers around Denmark who really made their local communities stand up to it and accept it, that really paved the way for the success of wind in Denmark. Today we can see that if we look at total Danish export figures, Denmark was hit by the financial crisis in 2008, and just like most other countries in Europe, our economy shrank and exports slowed down and almost came to a standstill. The growth came to a standstill. But if you look at exports of green technology since 2008, we have seen growth rates of between 10 and 14% every year. So there's a good case here for focusing on green technology industries. We can see that there have been thousands of new jobs have been created over the past few years, and actually most of them in areas of Denmark that have been hit very adversely by the financial crisis. Just one last remark. There's a discussion going on now on biorefineries. A group of people and organizations have come up with an idea for 6 biorefineries in Denmark, and it will be discussed and will also be part of the Energy Commission's discussions over the next few months, whether the government should invest in biorefineries. Some of you may have seen, you have a program here on Irish TV, Echo Eye. Denmark was featured last year. There were a number of cases from cities around Denmark and also from with regards to bioenergy. If you have any questions and my voice allows it, please feel free to come afterwards and I'll be around. And as I said, I have these white papers about bioenergy. Thank you very much for your attention.